Chapter 9. Wrapped in bed with her blanket and the book of fairy tales clutched against her chest, Lilica had finally fallen asleep. I placed the last of the clean dishes from dinner on the drying rack, watching the water swirl down the drain. Evening had crept through the cabin, bringing with it a slight chill as the wind picked up outside, causing a hollow moan to slither through the cracks of the windows. That stir-fry turned out pretty good. Lilica really seemed to like those mushrooms, Jermaine said with a soft chuckle as he crouched beside the wood stove, stoking up the embers from the fire, the flames dancing in his dark eyes. She did. Placing the dish towel on a hook by the sink, I crossed the room and sat down beside him, hugging my knees against my chest. Another one of the many things we never had access to in stores. Domain stared into the fire as it sprang back to life. You remember that guy Turk mentioned the other day? The one that's been giving him government information to decode? I nodded, watching as the hunger of the flames leapt and curled against the sides of the stove. Well, according to Turk, all the banned foods are not due to safety concerns. I looked over at him. What do you mean? Think about it. He closed the door of the stove and settled beside me. Any food that has high levels of antioxidants has been banned. And what do antioxidants help protect against? Cancer. The word lodged in my throat, bitter and pungent. Exactly. Those foods, among many other things, are a direct threat to MCOR. So Turk is saying that the medical establishment is purposefully keeping us sick? That's what those documents appear to reveal. But don't tell me you haven't thought about this before. You know better than I do that MCOR is the largest corporate business. They control everything. I bit my lip, feeling a chill run across my skin despite the warmth radiating from the stove. I have thought about this. But at the end of the day, I've always had to convince myself that they are trying to help people. But they're not, Seren. His eyes flashed with intensity as he leaned in close to me. What do you think those immunity enhancers are really about? They aren't providing people with a fortified immune system. They're making people's immune system dependent on them. My jaw clenched and a sickening weight settled in my gut. I knew he was right. The hissing shadows of doubt had always been there, questions I never had the courage to turn around and fully confront. For how could I? I had to get up every morning and believe that there was some good left in the world. The truth always took more strength to face than the lie doled out. But here it was now, the bitter truth, and the sharp talons of anger curled around me at the thought of the grid potentially being responsible for the death of so many in my life. My mother, my father, my brother Ellis. There was nothing left of my family, but memories housed within silent walls that were no longer mine. But why would they do this? My voice came out shaky, hands fisted in my lap as I pushed down the strangled scream that wanted to spill from me, the same one I had been stifling for so many years, like a ghost buried within a shallow grave. I just don't understand how the fatalities of cancer would benefit them. You know it all comes down to money and resource control. Domain's eyes continued to bore into me, the tendrils of his anger now colliding with mine. People no longer have power over their own reproductive rights, so they keep churning out babies, new generations that fund the corporations, all while keeping population growth low. It's a tidy little cycle of death and rebirth for them. His words sliced through the air, and he turned from me, raking his hand through his hair as he stared into the fire, his brow furrowed. And while the government preaches to the masses about collective unity and living without ownership, they are growing richer by the day. That point system you're given, it's all a ruse to keep everyone enslaved. They own us. I mean, do you really think all those forest fires are natural? I don't think they are. I think they're designed to keep us contained and easily tracked within city centers. And living out here on the compound, he swept his hand toward the window, his voice dropping to a fervent whisper. Doesn't mean we're free. Even if we do manage to get out without a target on our back and revoke our citizenship, we're still enslaved, still bound to their rules, not allowed to leave the borders beyond the land they have provided for us. They think if they keep us in a primitive state of poverty, they keep us silent and disposable. And it works. He stared at me, his eyes like a quiet storm. As long as we stay voiceless and complacent, they don't bother us out here. The veracity of what he said sunk deep into me, and a laden silence washed over the both of us as the crack and hiss of the fire permeated the room, the flames licking across the glass of the stove door, as if yearning to be released. When stripped down to the basic elements, everything was the same. The fragility of life always demanded sovereignty. Nothing could flourish in a confined space. Letting out a sigh, I rested my hand on his arm, feeling the muscles contract and release against my touch. For what it's worth, Domine, I do feel free here, more than I ever have on the grid. He looked at me, his eyes softening. Do you remember the trip we took all those years ago? Yes. I smiled at the faded memory. I had been 27 and fresh out of medical school, and Domine had taken time off from his civil engineering job. To celebrate, we had both splurged on a long-distance travel pass and spent a week driving up the coast. Nothing but sand, sun, and tangled bedsheets in rented rooms, Domine's lips tasting of sea salt. My pulse accelerated as the buried images rose and came into sharp focus. It had been so long since I had thought of that trip, our last blissful dive into oblivion, before everything began to unravel. That was the last time I felt free, Seren. Reaching for his hand, I entwined my fingers through his. Despite his fierce independence and ability to find a sense of contentment in the life he had carved out for himself here, there was something hidden beneath the exterior. In the depths of his eyes, I saw shadows, as if all the years of a solitude pressed down on him. You know, a part of me has never stopped wondering what my life would have looked like if I had chosen to leave with you. He shook his head, his thumb running a slow circle against the inside of my wrist. No, you had just started your medical practice. I knew how important it was to you. I should have never asked you to choose. That night rushed back at me, him standing in our living room with his bags at his feet, my whole world disintegrating, his eyes pleading, my resolve desperately wanting to crumble, the feel of the door as it closed behind me, leaving nothing but emptiness, clawing at a room that no longer held us together. I sighed and squeezed his hand, feeling the energy between us grow heavy. The thing is, I don't even recognize myself anymore. I feel like the person I was with you is gone now. Seren. His eyes seared into me as he drew my name out like a question, a long exhale waiting for an in-breath. I don't believe it's possible for that fire inside you to ever die. You were just forced to stop feeling it. He leaned closer to me as his fingers curled around mine, sending sparks of electricity dancing across my skin, drawing me into the depths of a longing I had no raft for. I hope you're right, I whispered as my face flushed, my heart a sudden wild drumbeat. Sucking in a breath, I pulled away from him, breaking the intensity of the moment. I'm pretty tired. I should probably go get some sleep. He nodded, a dark lock of his hair falling against his forehead as he stared into the fire. Good night, then. Good night, Domine. Rising to my feet, I made my way over to the bed where Lilica lay sleeping and closed the linen curtains that had been put up for privacy, enshrouding the space around us in fractured patterns of light. As I quickly slipped on my nightgown, I wondered if Domine could see me through the curtains. The thought of his eyes following the curve of my body sent a rush of heat coursing through me, and my breath hitched to my throat. I slid beneath the sheets, the rise and fall of Lilica's breath whispering against my cheek as I nestled beside her and watched the shadow outline of Domine pass by the curtain. I tried to brush aside the thoughts of the way his hand felt in mine, the burn of his eyes on me beside the fire, the closeness of his lips. But I couldn't. Everything inside me ached for him as I watched him make his way up the ladder and disappear into the loft. What's this, Mommy? Lilica held the tendril of a root in her hand as we sat at the table, watching me bundle up herbs and place them into the pockets of my pouch. Well, that is called golden seal. I reached over and fingered the thin yellowed strands of the root. It's good for things like tummy aches, colds, and infections. And this right here, I picked up a broad stalk of dark green leaves. This is called Devil's Club. It's good for coughs and sore muscles. What's this do? She reached for a dried bundle, its tiny purple flowers now withered and crisp with a touch. Well, that's comfrey. It helps heal boo-boos. Her eyes grew wide with interest, tracking the movements of my hands as I tied up the bundle of Devil's Club with string. She had never seen me working with plants before. No longer was it a mysterious concoction, secretively mixed up in an occasional tea. For the first time, I was able to speak to her openly without worry. I could share with her the same knowledge passed down from my own mother, like a legacy of interwoven threads tethering us all together. Where's Domine? Lilica leaned toward the window and rested her face against the pane, looking out into the gray pallor of the sky. Oh, he went over to a neighbor's house this morning to gather some vegetables. Apparently, they have a garden that they share. Her fingers touched the window, tracing invisible pictures on the glass. When's he coming back? I'm not quite sure, hon. Soon? Lilica had grown quite attached to Domine, spending most of her time following him around with an endless array of questions, fascinated by his world, which she had found herself in. And Domine was always there with answers and playful smiles, welcoming in her endless wonder. But beneath all that lay the truth I could no longer avoid, and the question she had yet to ask. We had now been here for almost 2 weeks, and I'd yet to talk to Lilica about her father. A heaviness settled in my chest as I sat beside the herbs and turned to her. Sweetie, can we talk about something? She nodded and climbed down from the chair, allowing me to gather her up into my arms and settle her on my lap. I smoothed back her hair and leaned down, resting my cheek against hers. I know you miss Daddy. A little bit. Her hands fiddled with the buttons on my shirt. When am I going to see him? I took a deep breath, trying to find the right words, the kind that would softly ease her into a reality no child should ever have to face. But there was no gentle way to put it, no way to smooth the sharp edges. Well, honey, your daddy is not going to be part of our lives anymore. She looked up at me, her eyes swimming with confusion. Why? Well, something happened between your daddy and me, but I want you to know it has nothing to do with you. Daddy's not mad at me? No, Lily. I took her hand and gave it a squeeze. Your daddy loves you very much, but sometimes mommies and daddies can't live together anymore, and that's why we had to leave. That's why we're here. We're going to start a new life, just you and me. Pursing her lips, she glanced out the window. What about Domine? Well, I guess he's going to be a part of our new life too. Can he be my new daddy? Her question threw me off guard, and tears unexpectedly rushed to the surface. There was a sorrow in her words, a bleak acceptance grasping at the strings of some hopeful replacement. Something breaks, you glue it back together. Something tears, and you sew it up. I shook her head. No, sweetie, it doesn't work that way. Why not? She wriggled off my lap, her eyes brimming with the dark shadows of something that looked like anger. Why can't I have a new daddy? Sweetheart, I took her hands in mine and pulled her close to me. Domine can't be your daddy, but he can be your friend. As if on cue, the door opened and Domine walked in, trailing the scent of smoke from outside, his arms full of vegetables. Who's in the mood for a yummy salad for lunch? He asked as he looked down at Lilica with a smile. His sudden presence shifted the mood in the room, the mournful weight colliding with his oblivious cheer, and Lilica drew away from me, gravitating toward a horizon that held the promise of color and softness. Sidling up next to him, she reached up to grab a tomato, deep red cradled in the palm of her hand. I want some yummy salad. Great. He threw her a wide grin as he took a bowl from the cupboard. Do you want to be my little helper? Yes. Wooden legs scraped against the floor as Lilica grabbed a stool and dragged it to the counter, climbing up beside him. Domine handed her the bowl and placed some lettuce beside it, which she began to tear into small pieces. This neighbor friend of mine, the one I got these veggies from, she has a little boy about your age. What do you think about them coming over in a few days for a visit? I watched as Lilica nodded, the light in her eyes returning as a smile spread across her face. Their chatter filled the small space within the kitchen, and I stood from the table, quietly slipping out the door. Leaning against the side of the cabin, I stared into the haze of the sky, trying to arrange the current of my thoughts. Lilica was too young to fully understand that the changes I made were permanent, but she would in time, and when she did, would she resent me for it? The sound of the door closing pulled me from my thoughts, and I looked over to see Domine walking toward me. "What's going on? Are you okay?" I wrapped my arms around myself, the slight breeze in the air nipping at my skin and toying with my hair. I just told her she wasn't going home, that she wouldn't be seeing her dad again. "Oh, wow." He furrowed his brow, shoving his hands into his pockets. "How'd you take it?" I swept my hand toward the window. Well, she appears to have bounced back from it pretty quickly. I don't know. I don't think she was able to fully process things before you came in. "I'm sorry I interrupted that. I had no idea." "How could you? I wasn't planning on telling her in that moment. It just came out. I couldn't dance around it anymore." I brushed back my hair with a sigh. "Do you know what she said to me?" "What?" "She said she wanted you to be her new daddy." I shook my head, a sad smile pressing against my lips. I suppose I can't blame her. When he was around, Trendon had never been much of a father. And you're so good with her. It makes sense that she would try to cling to something better. A sorrow seemed to stir in his eyes as I spoke, and I suddenly regretted the words that had spilled out. He had never wanted to be a father. That was one thing he had made very clear when we had been together. He refused to bring a child into a world so bleak. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that." I ran my hands through my hair and stepped away from him, feeling the threads of our tangled past catch around my heart. "I don't want you to feel like you're under any obligation to fill some role for her." "Seren." His voice was low and heavy with sentiment as he gently took me by my arms. "I adore your daughter, if you haven't noticed. And while I obviously can't be your dad, I would love nothing more than to be given the opportunity to be a part of her life." My body began to tremble, and I wasn't sure if it was from the sudden chill of the wind that blew leaves around our feet or from the conviction of his words. And that's when I felt it, the gentle drop of rain against my skin.